He is an Emmy award-winning broadcaster now with Fox Sports. Chris Myers joins us. The book is called That Deserves a Wow. Untold Stories of Legends and Champions. There's more to that. Chris Myers, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Adam. It's good to be on with you.
I did not do the wow justice. I appreciate your time.
No, you had the right tone. Look, we use the word wow more than we realize. Of course, in sports, like, wow, what a catch! Wow, what a move! But we also use it in life. I mean, sometimes it's not great. Somebody said, "Hey, I had a fender bender." You're like, wow,
Yeah.
sorry to hear that. So it's one of those words that just is part. And from those Sports Center days, it kind of was a regular thing. So that's why we went with it. And covering a lot of wow moments in sports is a lot of fun.
All right, I'm going to dig into some of the things that you get into in the book, but I am curious because the wow was your thing. Like Dan Patrick had the whiff, right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
yeah.
Did you work on that? How did That Deserves a Wow? How did that come about? Was it patterned after anything else in your career, or as somebody growing up? I don't know. Maybe it was Dick Enberg's very simple "Oh my."
Yeah, it was not, and but it came. I watched a lot of movies, a lot of television growing up, so certain words, moments stuck out in my head about way things were said. There's a movie, The Great Escape. If you go with me,
yes,
it's a great classic cast and movie. Reruns, whatever, it's still on. I highly recommend. Based on a true story. My dad was in the military. Anyway, watched it as a kid. The scene where Steve McQueen, they're in prison there, and he, along with, I think it's James Garner,
yep.
they brew their own alcohol and whiskey, right? They get all the prisoners, and some of the British guys are like, wow, how'd you get the alcohol? And they start drinking, but as they're brewing it and making it, they each take a sip, and they're like, wow. One guy's wow, and then the next guy is wow, and then Steve McQueen's like, wow. So I that just stuck in my head, and so as a watching sports as a kid. And then here's how, by the way, and I said this in the book, Adam, we never said, hey, this is going to be a catchphrase. At least that wasn't the guys I worked with in the growth years of ESPN in the 90s. You would say, we'd all be watching the games. We wrote our own material. We're in there. It was so much fun in the main area of the building before you go out to the set to do the shows. And it's so, somebody strikes out, and I did hey, you're not good, or Dan Patrick did a whiff, or nothing but the bottom of the net. And if you said it and people reacted and you liked it, then we would use it because you just got tired. You had so many highlights of the same types of things. So instead of a great hit or a great catch, and hey, wow, he made the goal. So I just threw in, and that word stuck with me. I used it in conversation. One of the highlights, I was like, after using a wow, and I was like, well, that deserves a wow. And then that kind of caught on. So, and it's ESPN has their Hall of Fame with I kid because I care. There's a bunch of those. You're not good, which was taken from Caddyshack and brought into, which later Jose Canseco said, I think the players don't like that, so you better be careful. I was like, okay, well, back off. So anyway, that's kind of the long story about that. We could go on and on.
Oh, no, I also appreciate you starting it with the movie The Great Escape, one of my all-time favorites. Hiltz is also one of my all-time favorite characters. How did he get the baseball glove? How did they know he needed the baseball glove? Was he captured with the baseball glove? I really didn't understand.
I think when he parachuted down, that was in his bag, his backpack. It was one of those things that, and boy, those prisoners, they looked awfully cleaned up well for being in prison.
Well, they were all officers, I believe, so officers live differently. Chris Myers, That Deserves a Wow, the book. All right, just looking at, first of all, how'd you get Bill Murray to write the foreword?
Well, Bill and I connected back with the ESPYs in the early 90s. I've known him for, 30 years. A big sports fan, obviously. And he's the kind of guy you'd want to hang out with even if he wasn't a big star. And so we hit it off. He comes from a big family. So do I. Sense of humor. I tried a little stand-up comedy when I was in college in between working in radio before I got into television. So we hit it up. We hung out, went to a game. His brothers, went to his charity golf event. He met my family. And even though, he's a busy guy, we stayed in touch. And it's just sometimes bounced some things off of him, ideas for interviews or when I was doing certain highlights or shows. So we stayed in touch, and he is a very sensitive side. He had a very caring side, which I talk about in the book, and of course some funny moments where I'd go to his house, and true story in there. I'll cut it short, but invites me to his house, and I was working with the ESPN at the time. I was in Manhattan on an off day. I said, hey, he said, why don't you come up to the house? It's up on the Hudson River somewhere, and I said, hey, I don't have a car. Really, I just have a certain amount. He goes, I'll send a car, don't worry. So he sends this gigantic white stretch limo, right? That's like just exorbitant in your face. So it drives, picks me up in Manhattan, drives me up. And as he's pulling into his driveway, he's videotaping me, and he's announcing, like, hey, ESPN, this is how Chris Myers spends your money when he's on the road, his per diem, don't believe what he writes, that type of thing. So he's just got that. And then taking me through his yard, we're stepping in these gopher holes. And he says, I can't, these, I don't, I said, what are these from? He said, the gopher, I can't get rid of them, from the Caddyshack movie. And I thought it was just like messing with me. But he had some real issues with that. So anyway, he's a really interesting guy. And I reached out to him and I just said, hey, I've been approached about a book. I'm putting it together. It's a lot of things that I've talked to you about through the years in covering sports. And he said, would you write the forward? And he said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And so I really appreciated him because he doesn't do a lot of those kinds of things, and he's a busy guy and tough to track down. But he did it, and it was a little offbeat, but that's Bill Murray.
All right, I want to ask you about a colleague of yours now at Fox. Tom Brady is in his first year as a lead analyst, and I know one of your chapters is about Tom. So, what was it about Tom that made the book? How did Tom make the wall, if you will?
Yeah, that was covering Super Bowls and leaving ESPN, then going to Fox because Fox was growing, right? They had the NFL, they added baseball, so I had a chance there to actually work on, even though I was the field reporter, but to cover World Series and cover Super Bowls, to be actually on the sideline doing pre-interviews and post-interviews and halftime reports with Joe Buck, Troy Aikman when they were calling the Super Bowls for Fox. So I did quite a few, and I did some of those when the Patriots won, but I was on that sideline when it looked like they were going to lose to Atlanta 28-3 and had that. And there's, of course, dealing with Mr. Warmth, Bill Belichick at the half, which is a few chapters in there as well. But just the level-headedness of Brady and that team. And when I look back on it, I didn't think they were going to pull that out. I got to be honest with you. I'm over there watching them, but it was like they were just machine-like. It was almost like they ignored the score. It was kind of like, we're going to do what we're going to do, and then this will force the other team to do what they're going to do. And then anyway, they go to overtime, and it was first overtime Super Bowl, and they win it, and it's just the rush of media. So getting to him quickly, and that's part of the job, is you want to get the raw emotion as soon as you can, right? And then they set up the stage, and you do all the Super Bowl trophy presentation. So I had to fight through a producer, a cameraman got knocked down. So, it's a swarm of people. If you go back and watch a video, but eventually I get to him, and even the producer's like, well, take the overhead camera, you got to go. And Tom was exhausted. I got to him, and it was the year when he had the deflate gate, and he had an illness in the family. There were a lot of other things, and so it was really, I think, a special kind of and the greatest comeback ever by what is now the greatest quarterback in the history of the game. So I was like, hey, and he's being swarmed, and I said, can you do an interview for a minute? He said, do I have some time to take a break? And the producer yelled, so I just said, hey, we're live on Fox with 100 million people with Tom Brady. So he had to respond or blow me off, and he was very gracious about it and responded and answered the questions, even though he was totally exhausted physically and emotionally. And who knew that later he would go into broadcasting. But I will say this, even though he had his own persona, when we sat with him in those production meetings, those TV meetings, in those Super Bowls, I didn't do a lot of his regular season games, but I did do the Super Bowls. He was I saw a different side of him, and I think that's what Fox saw. Of course he knows the game, but there was more personality there, more insight to be critical, to have a standard, and his work ethic is incredible and still has been, even as as he went into broadcasting. He's put a lot of time in behind the scenes that people haven't seen.
And he's too handsome, right? He's like excessively handsome.
Yeah, it's almost like model, like he's like a mannequin model, right? It's like, and he was that way, in person too. He'd come into the meeting, and he's tall, and he's got all the standards that you need. That's one of the things that some people thought, well, boy, if he was on the set, right, if he was on a pre-game show,
right,
or I'm sorry, a kick show, Fox NFL Kicker, well, you would see him more than you do in the game, than just hear him, because obviously the game is the thing and your voice cuts through. But that's another advantage for him, that he's got a lot of things going for him. So that's another option for him if he between owning a team and running his empire. Yeah.
No question. All right, a couple of more minutes before we have to say goodbye. Chris Myers, the book is called That Deserves a Wow. You were on the game on Sunday. I knew we were going to talk, and then I'm watching the game, the Panthers game on Sunday. I'm like, oh, look, you were there for what I think was the best performance of Bryce Young. It wasn't always great, but he made some incredible throws, nearly 300 yards passing, another go-ahead fourth quarter drive, this one for a touchdown. So what are your thoughts? I know you had seen him before. What are your thoughts on Carolina's potential quarterback in the future?
Well, he has a string here of over 100 and something throws going back. I think it's really the best 4-game stretch of his career. We said going in, but he didn't turn the ball over in that game. And after Kansas City, I mean, and the Bucs, these are playoff caliber defenses, even at this stage with injuries. Yeah, very impressed. I got to say, I called his first game when his career opened. I know he's gone through head coaches and coordinators, and even the benching portion had him earlier this year. I mean, he's a different guy on the field. In person, when you sit and talk to him, he's the same. I got to give him credit for handling. It doesn't throw anybody under the bus, takes responsibility, no negative energy, even when things are going badly. And that was one of the things they pointed out. And they said, hey, when he went to that scout team and was running, once he got that demotion, the benching this year, he still attacked it professionally and gave it his all. And that meant a lot to the entire team. The defensive players were remarking about that. And so he's got the leadership thing. He just has it in a different style. And I'm not that I thought he was an abject failure because of where he was chosen in last year, but I'm like, boy, this guy needs a lot of help, and the growth period's going to be a while. But I think they still don't know if they found their franchise quarterback, but I'm much more a believer. We're seeing more of the Alabama Bryce Young than the early pro Panther Bryce Young, and I mean, he's a guy you can build around. I mean, look, he doesn't have world-class receivers. The defense is playing better football, but I'm more of a believer, I think, than I've ever been, and I think the Panthers are too.
Do you have any more Panthers games this year?
Not that I know of. Our schedule's a little quirky because of the flexing that's going on. So, but I have done a couple, and as I said, one early, and I was really, really not just impressed with him, but the way Dave Canales and the offense they had to adjust a little bit to his style, what works for him, and he had to learn not to take off and run when that first receiver wasn't open. At the professional level, being open is a little bit different in the NFL than in college, and I think he's learned that.
Chris Myers. The book is called That Deserves a Wow. I hope it is a smash hit. I appreciate your time, sir. We'll be watching and listening, and good luck with the book. We'll talk again down the road.
Yeah, anytime. It'd be good to chat more with you. But thanks, Adam. Take care.
You got it. Chris Myers here. That Deserves a Wow is the book.